welcome to the Cardinal, News of Virginia, a podcast from Cardinal News. We're a nonprofit news outlet covering Southwest and Southside Virginia at cardinalnews.org. The Cardinal podcast is sponsored by Muneris, serving communities with expert group benefits and Medicare solutions. I'm Dutchie Jessee, and today we are talking with the Cardinal's founding editor, Dwayne Yancey, because Virginia primaries are now underway. And Dwayne earlier wrote a piece called 10 Things You Should Know now that the primaries are underway. So we're going to get into that. Welcome, Dwayne.
Good to be here.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. So first, when are the primaries and has early voted started yet?
They are right now.
Okay.
Early voting began May 2nd. The actual election day is June 17th. So early voting goes almost all the way up to that.
Okay. First, number one on the list is a shameless plug for our voter guide. Dwayne, we have this voter guide at cardinalnews.org. It's a massive project that you have contributed to enormously. Also, Zach Shelton, who does audience engagement content for us. We work on it continually because there's constantly things to update, but particularly when an election is coming up. So why should people care about our voter guide? How useful is it? Here's your chance to really plug it.
I don't want to say more than we can deliver.
Okay.
But this appears to be the only place in the state where you can go and see who is running in your locality. You can click on the name of your locality and find out who's on the ballot. Mm-hmm. It's also maybe the only place where you can go and see where most of those candidates stand. Mm-hmm. We've sent a questionnaire to all the statewide candidates, all the House of Delegate candidates around the state. Most of them have replied, and we've posted their answers on the voter guide.
What's on the ballot this fall?
Well, this is for the June primary,
Mm-hmm.
not the fall.
Right. But you mentioned the House. You mentioned those seats coming up. So are we looking at a big year with all of that?
This is a big year for Virginia. Mm-hmm. Virginia is sort of an off-cycle year. So while the presidential election was big, in some ways this is a bigger year for Virginia. We elect a governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, all 100 members of the House of Delegates, and more local offices than we can count. Mm-hmm. For the June 17th primaries, there are statewide primaries on the Democratic side for lieutenant governor and attorney general. There are primaries in both parties in, I think, 17 House of Delegates districts around the state and about a dozen or so local offices around the state. That's what's happening now, and then come the fall, we've got all the rest.
Mm-hmm. Number two on your list of 10 things we should know about the Virginia primaries, the Republican ticket is set. Democrats have 12 options, so break that down for us.
Sure. I guess the big thing to know is we already know who the candidates for governor will be. On the Democratic side, Abigail Spanberger, former congresswoman from the 7th District. On the Republican side, Lieutenant Governor Winsome Earl Sears. And indeed, the whole Republican ticket is set. They've got John Reed, Richmond talk show host for Lieutenant Governor, and Attorney General Jason Miyares is running for re-election. So the Republicans have no statewide primary. They know who they've got. Mm-hmm. Democrats have 6 candidates for lieutenant governor, 2 for attorney general.
Breaking that down, number 3, Democrats are working toward a repeal to right to work in Virginia. So speaking of those candidates just now, first of all, remind us what right to work is, because not every state, has that. And then let's get into what's happening with Democrats here.
Sure. All of this comes from the questionnaire that we sent to the candidates.
In the voter guide.
On the voter guide,
Mm-hmm.
there are 11 questions there.
Mm-hmm.
Right to work, I found one of the more notable answers. Right to work is the law in Virginia that forbids, if there's a union in your workplace, you do not have to join and you do not have to pay dues. Mm-hmm. That is the opposite of a closed shop that many states have, where if there's a union in the workplace, whether you're a member or not, you have to pay dues. This has always been something very cherished by the Virginia business community. but there's a lot of sentiment within the Democratic Party right now to repeal that, and we see that in the answers to the voter guide.
Why? Does this happen a lot, by the way? Ebb and flow, like this is a continual topic that keeps coming up, or what?
No, this is a shift. For a long time, Democrats in Virginia, I won't say danced around it, but they took the view, well, we're pro-labor, but we support right to work. Now they've gotten to the point where, no, we want to repeal right to work. I should point out that the candidate for governor, Abigail Spanberger, is not necessarily there yet. She has not called for that. But lots and lots of members of the on the Democratic side in the General Assembly and their candidates this year are calling for that.
They've already spoken about it, haven't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And on the Republican side, Winsome Earl Sears has signaled that she would like to run on this.
On the repeal?
Saying it would be a bad thing if Democrats won and repealed the law. They
Okay.
it would be bad for economic development in Virginia. It'll be very curious how that goes politically. Historically, Virginia was very supportive of right to work and hostile to unions. But back in 2006, Republicans tried to pass a constitutional amendment to write the right to work law into the Virginia Constitution. Surprisingly, that failed. And it failed because a lot of otherwise Republican areas voted against it. So it may not have the appeal that Republicans think it does, but it is certainly popular within the business community.
Okay. So next on our list, number 4, some Republicans are open to legalizing retail sales of cannabis. Is this on the questionnaire?
This is also on the questionnaire.
Yeah.
Just to sort of recap, Virginia is the only state where personal possession of small amounts of cannabis is legal, but you can't buy it or sell it. Nonetheless, there have been lots of rogue stores pop up selling it. And we've written about those. Democrats in the General Assembly 2 years in a row now have passed a bill to legalize it. 2 years in a row, Governor Youngkin has vetoed it. Not surprisingly, in the questionnaire, Democrats are gung-ho for passing legalization. We've seen a few Republicans in the General Assembly vote for it. Most notably, Delegate Chris Obenshain from Montgomery County, Republican, voted for it this past time. So did Delegate Will Moorfield, Republican from Tazewell. In the questionnaires, I won't say that there are Republicans for it, but they are open to the idea. You would have to look in the voter guide to see exactly what they said, but Delegate Terry Austin, Republican from Bogota, and his primary challenger, Austin Schwind, both expressed some degree of openness to the idea. And we've had lots of Republicans tell us privately they would be fine voting for legalization. They just haven't because they know the governor is going to veto it. They also have disagreements with Democrats over how that market should be structured. So there's some technical objections, but we seem to be moving to a place where enough Republicans would support that it would become law if there's a governor to sign it.
Well, and I will say, Cardinal News, we cover the realities, the current day realities of the status of cannabis in Virginia a lot, because we find a lot of interesting stories about stores that are popping up that are in this weird place where we haven't legalized we haven't structured it, I should say, I guess. But so all that to say, we put it in the questionnaire. I mean, I don't have a say in the questionnaire, but we put it in there and want to know some answers about it because we're in this weird in-between place in Virginia. And I'll just plug cardinalnews.org. We have a lot of coverage about cannabis stores and all of that going on in Virginia.
For reasons I do not fully understand, Southwest Virginia has been the epicenter of these stores popping up under the guise of being adult share, where you go in, you pay $20 for an overpriced sticker, and the store will quote, share some marijuana with you.
They
The
can't
Attorney
call it
General-
gifting?
Pardon me?
They can't call it gift? It has to be share, is that the
That's
term?
another word.
Yeah.
The Attorney General has ruled that's against the law, but it's happening anyway.
It's endlessly fascinating. Okay, next on our list, number 5, only 3 incumbents face challenges. That seems pretty straightforward.
Yes. 2 Democrats, 1 Republican. We're talking about the House of Delegates primaries around the state. Democrats pack Hope up in Northern Virginia in Arlington. Democrat Dolores McQuinn in the Richmond suburbs in Henrico County. And then on the Republican side, Terry Austin in Bogota. Those are the only incumbents who have drawn challengers.
Okay, and then another short one, 2 districts have double primaries. What do you mean double primaries?
They have primaries on both the Democratic and Republican side.
Gotcha.
Those are House District 49 in the Danville area, where Delegate Danny Marshall, Republican, is retiring. So there's an open seat that has brought forth candidates on both sides. And then District 89, Chesapeake and Suffolk, where Delegate Baxter Ennis, Republican, is also retiring. Again, that has brought forth challengers, or not challengers, but candidates on both sides.
All right, in many districts, these primaries are tantamount to elections, so they do have significance.
Yes. Because of how polarized our elections have become, most House of Delegates districts in Virginia are either strongly Democratic or strongly Republican. So while there may be candidates on the ballot in the fall, the primary is really where the action is. There are really very few, quote, swing districts anymore in Virginia. So if you look at some of the primaries going on, I mean, there's one in Southwest Virginia where Delegate Jack Arnold, Republican, Smith County, is retiring. Yeah, that's a 75% or more Republican district. I don't want to say, a Democrat will never win there, but it's a 75% plus Republican district. You can draw your own conclusions. Likewise in Arlington, District 1 with Delegate Hope, where he's got some challengers, that's a 70% plus Democratic district.
3 primaries are in districts that are clearly competitive in the fall. Where?
One is House District 21 in Prince William County, currently represented by Democrat Josh Thomas. District 89, Chesapeake, Suffolk, where Baxter Ennis, Republican, is retiring. And then District 97 in Virginia Beach, currently represented by Democrat Michael Fegans. All of those were won with 52% or so or less of the vote last time. That is where whoever controls the majority, the majority will run through those districts, whether we have a Democrat majority or a Republican majority. So, in the Prince William seat, currently held by a Democrat, there's a Republican primary. In the Ennis seat, as we talked about, there's a double primary, both on the Democratic and Republican side. And then in Fegans' district in Virginia Beach, there's a Republican primary to decide who runs against him.
I'm skipping to number 10 because I want to get back to number 9. Number 10 is really specific. The Botetourt County Board of Supervisors could see a philosophical shift.
Yes. As indicative of how Virginia politics are these days, the local primaries on the Democratic side are all on the eastern side of the state. The Republican primaries and local elections are almost entirely on the western side. Bogota is unusual in that there are 2 Board of Supervisors seats with primaries going on. The Bogota Board is currently 5-0 Republican, but as often happens, I would describe that now as it's sort of a 4-to-1 split, with sort of 4, say, traditional Republicans and 1 further right Republican. Depending on the outcome of these primaries, that could be preserved, or you could have a 3-to-2 split on the more conservative side, depending on who wins the primaries for the Buchanan and Amsterdam districts.
So Botetourt, though, has one of the places that has seen growth, or at least it did in recent years. It's become a destination, I think, for retirement. I hope I'm not overgeneralizing, but it's one of the places in the western part of the state that, and I guess you can tell me about the latest demographics from Weldon Cooper or the census, but where it's seen some growth, and it's interesting because it's a place with a lot of just gorgeous views and lots of that feel of a rural lifestyle, but it's gotten more and more amenities because of the growth there. So, and you live around there too, so I know you're privy to it.
So this is close to home to me, although I'm not in either one of those districts. Sort of big picture, Bogotog's a place that when I first moved there back in the dark ages, it was a Democratic community, sort of conservative Democratic. Now it's become very Republican, 75, probably, certainly 70% plus Republican. And one of the issues there has been growth, and how much of it to have. The southern part of Bogotá is essentially a suburb of Roanoke and is seeing a lot of growth, and that draws both pros and cons. People want to live there for the rural views, but then sometimes they want a grocery store nearby.
Right.
And
the eternal. So finally, let's talk about expected turnout. You predict pretty low turnout, especially in parts of Southwest Virginia. But my question is, Dwayne, when there's a primary, when is there ever decent turnout? What would be considered good turnout for a primary? Because people, despite the Cardinal News voter guide and our coverage, people just live their lives. Do you know what I mean? And so primaries are often, and this is June 17th, primaries are often, people have no idea there's a primary going on.
Yeah.
So what would be good turnout?
Anything in double digits would probably be good turnout for a primary. One of the factors here is you do not have a statewide Republican primary. They were going to have one, but then for lieutenant governor, and then one of the candidates dropped out, so there was no need. That certainly, if you're a Republican in a county that has no local primary for House of Delegates or local office, there's nothing to vote for. This isn't for you. On the Democratic side, statewide, there's lieutenant governor, attorney general, and while those are fascinating races, it's not the top of the ticket.
Right.
And there are not, there are certainly differences between the candidates, but they are more stylistic. It's not like you have some titanic battle over some issue and the direction of the party. It's more which of these candidates do you like best, sort of thing. So, that will, have some effect on turnout, particularly in the rural part of Virginia, which is very Republican. If there's no local primary for House of Delegates or local office, you're going to see very, very low turnout. I went back and looked at the turnout in the presidential primary a year ago. Now, granted, there wasn't much action on the Democratic side, but you had some precincts in Southwest Virginia that had 0 voters turn out. You may have that again.
But you still have to staff it. Like these places, they still have to they have to do all the things they would normally do.
Yes, and that has become an issue for some registrars' offices. Some are more concerned about that than others, but yes, they do have to open. A lot of the controversy coming from Republicans, many Republicans would like to reduce the number of days for early voting. Although many registrars tell me that's not really a problem. Some say it is, but not all. Most are like, well, we're going to be here anyway.
Right.
But the day of voting, in these precincts, yes, they have to open. They have to have the machines up and running. They have to have, people staffing it. The polls in Virginia open 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. The people working the polls they have to get there before then and
Right.
stay after that. So that's a long day. And, if no one shows up to vote, or you only have one or two voters,
Bring something to do.
yeah.
We don't get a lot of turnout, and that's okay. But it's part of the process, and we know you'll be covering it, and also give this opportunity to plug the voter guide that we keep on cardinalnews.org and update it accordingly. Dwayne Yancey is our founding editor at Cardinal, writes an opinion, several opinion pieces, usually a week, and also writes West of the Capitol, our Friday afternoon newsletter that goes out that's always chock full of interesting tidbits and stories and all that good stuff. So, Dwayne, how do people get a hold of you if they want to chat?
Well, I live out in the woods of Bogota, so probably the best way is email, Dwayne@cardinalnews.org. And you mentioned West of the Capitol. When early voting is going on, I will be using the weekly newsletter to look at the weekly trends. We obviously don't know who's ahead,
Yeah.
but we know where people are voting and where they're not. And sometimes you can read certain things into that, based on one county being up or another county being down.
Yeah. Just admiring your Cardinal News merch, available at our merch store right now, cardinalnews.org.
I do believe in product placement for those.
We clearly do here. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can see that we do as well. Well, Dwayne, thank you very much, and we will keep coming back to you as election season gets rolling, and because it's always interesting and things are always changing. So thank you very much for your time and your insights. And I want to thank the sponsor of the Cardinal podcast, and that is Muneris, serving communities with expert group benefits and Medicare solutions. Thank you to Muneris and to Cardinal News' Zach Shelton and Sherry Quinley for their production support. Read our paywall-free news at cardinalnews.org. I'm Dutchie Jessee.
From Red Oak to Greenville, Bluefield to Orange, and Gold Vein to Silver Beach, the Virginia Press Room features the voices of Virginia's press corps from every corner of Virginia. The podcast is a joint production of the Virginia Public Access Project and VPM News. Get the top headlines of the week and the inside scoop on Virginia politics when our top reporters open their notebooks and tell us the story behind the story. New episodes every Monday morning.